All right, real quick. Where does the word Caucasian come from? It's a name that the Europeans gave themselves. They called themselves Caucasians. What does Caucasian mean? It means a cave dweller, one who dwells in the cave. So Caucasian, the Europeans know, they know their origin. They know where they come from. And their origin is even marked in the Bible, in the book of Job. Watch this. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, right? Job is speaking of how so-called white man had him in derision, right? Whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock, right? Job said, I wouldn't even have their fathers sit with their highest so-called kings or whatever, sit with my dogs, right? They're a base nation, right? Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished, right? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time, desolate and waste. Who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They used to eat the plants and cut up roots and stuff like that for food, right? They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief. This is how the children of Israel chased these men. They chased them away like thieves, like because they were just, when you say base nation, these people actually, like they would pick bugs and stuff out of each other's beards and stuff. And they lived in caves around bat droppings and guano. Imagine the things that they were going through, right? So Job is trying to give you a clear vision of the mannerisms of these people, right? They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. That's who the so-called Caucasian white man is. So Europeans do have a clear vision of their history. They do know who they are. So like when you tell like a lot of white men, you normally come from caves. This is your origin. Like this is where you guys came from in the 1400s and took over. They called it the Renaissance era. That means it was the rebirth era. Renaissance. Rebirth of what? It was the rebirth of the white man. That's when whites came out of them caves. They went to war with everyone and they took over. And that's a blessing that God gave them, though. They had a gift of war. When Jacob and Esau, the first white man that's recorded being born in the book of Genesis 25, came from a black mother and a black father, right? So Jacob's blessing was the kingdom when Christ returns, right? To those who keep in God's commandments as Israelites. And Esau cried to his father, don't I get a blessing? And he told him what his blessing was. His blessing would be the dew of the earth. He would have all the best places on earth to live. This is his future prophecy. This was his blessing. And he would gain it by war, by the sword. And that's why you see white men, they run the world when it comes to missiles and bombs. And that was a gift from God. But the so-called black, Hispanic, and Native American Indian, and we get the gift of heaven if we can keep God's commandments as the Israelites.